Yeah.
You couldn't be more prepared.
Yeah, I promise I won't.
All right.
That was a big getting them.
Feeling
Thank you to those who were already seated, and I have your, thank you, yes, especially you two in the back. Yeah, right. Friends, we are so excited to welcome Reverend Sue Fisher and our Director of Children's and Family Ministry, Michelle LoMonaco, here today to tell us about an epic adventure that they have been on. Oh, yes, you were on the epic adventure too.
Yes, Tedley.
Tedley, so you get to type in.
Chime in.
Yes, chime in. Also, friends, we get Sue Fisher 2 weeks in a row because Sue is going to be preaching for us next week when I'm on the young adult retreat. So we are so excited to have you twice in a row. We are so blessed. Right, friends, take it away.
Well, Lauren just said a lot of what I was about to say. So good morning, welcome. We're so glad that you guys are all here. The minute we started on this adventure, I thought, I want to keep talking about this because this is great. Everybody needs to hear about this trip. So I don't know if there's any of you out here who have done this trip, and we'll ask at the end if you want to share your story if you have, or if you're thinking about it, or if you're just curious, or maybe you just came for the treats. I don't know, but I am glad that you're here, and we do have our tale of adventure to share with you. But first, Sue is going to start by giving a little bit of a history about what this is. Why are we walking? What are we doing?
Yep. Thank you, Michelle. I will give a little bit of the history of the Camino, and then Michelle will talk about our route and show some pictures of our trip, and we'll talk about some of the essentials that you need if you're going to do this trip. And then we will talk about personally what it meant to us, and then we'll open it up for questions. So here we go. Let me see if I can click this on. The Camino de Santiago translates to the way of St. James. And I've often wondered, how do you get Santiago out of James?
Or James out of Santiago.
Or James out of Santiago. And let me see if my slides are changing. Oh, there it is. So it originated in the Hebrew, Yaakov. Then the Spanish picked it up and it was Iago. So San is saint, of course. Iago, then it was Santiago, and then Santiago. And you know the evolution of language, it became Santiago, which denotes James, who was the apostle and brother of John. Santiago. What we did is most often called a pilgrimage. And a pilgrimage is a journey that takes you out of your home life and out of your work life and sends you on a journey, an experience to discover yourself, to tap into your spirituality, to get you out of your everyday humdrum, whatever it is, and help you to reflect or go a little bit deeper. And it's often religious. People do a pilgrimage for a religious purpose. And the destination of a pilgrimage is often a sacred place. It's a holy site, or a site where a miracle happened, or a site where there are some kind of relics that you are supposed to visit. A pilgrimage is connected to all of the major world religions. All of the religions have a pilgrimage that their followers can take. But the Camino de Santiago's origins come from Christianity, and it started way over 1,000 years ago. So I want to tell you the very interesting legend of St. James. You ready?
Yes.
Okay. As I said, St. James was the brother of John, and it's in the Gospels. And James and John were called the sons of thunder. Yes, the sons of thunder. And I know I'm talking to a very schooled group here. So after the death and resurrection and ascension of Jesus, the apostles divided up the world into their different missionary routes and missionary destinations. James got the Iberian Peninsula, which is now, of course. So he preached there for a while and he returned to Jerusalem. And in the year 44, Herod killed him. That he died by the sword, and it's in Acts 12. So he was martyred. And after that, now here's where the legend really begins. A group of James' followers took his body and put it in a boat. And they got in the boat, and the legend says that the angels guided the boat through the Mediterranean, through the Straits of Gibraltar, and all the way up to the northern coast of Spain, where the boat landed or beached or whatever. And a queen, some queen of the area, I don't know who she was, they didn't name her, found the boat, had 3 bodies, dead bodies in it, probably James' companions. They probably didn't make it on that long voyage. I guess the angels didn't feed them, whatever. So she took the bodies and she buried them in a tomb. And it was forgotten for 800 years. And in the year 814, a hermit, unnamed, had a vision. And he had a vision of a field of stars. Campo Stella. Campo is field, Stella stars. He had a vision of a Campo Stella. And so this vision led him to where this tomb was. And they excavated it, and they found 3 bodies. And so the hermit called the bishop, and he told him what he had discovered. And the bishop said, "It's James and 2 companions."
Right.
So the bishop told the king, and the king said, "By golly, James will be the patron saint of whatever Spain was called then, right? Of Spain." So that's how he became the patron saint of Spain. So a monastery was built on the site of the tomb, and a small village grew up in the area. And word spread that James was buried there, and so people started to come and visit, one after another. And pretty soon, a miracle or 2 happened, which meant more pilgrims started to come and visit the site. And the local bishops were thrilled. Because pilgrims meant money, and money meant they could fight the war against the Moors. Nice. Oh, there you go. So Santiago de Compostela, St. James of the Field of Stars, grew into a little village, which grew into a bustling city. And today it's a big city. And in 1985, it was declared a UNESCO World Heritage Site, the whole city. The pilgrim routes came from all over Europe, and they all end at the cathedral, at the plaza in Santiago de Compostela. The first, that's a little view of the rooftops of the city. It was really beautiful. The cathedral, the first phase of the cathedral was built from 1033 to 1075, but over the 1,000 years, it has been added to and enlarged, and it was pretty busy. The architecture was super busy, and it has a variety for all you architecture fans. It has every architectural style. No, Romanesque, Gothic, it's just kind of a mishmash. The interior, can you see all these little baby pasty angels? They were huge, and they were all over the place. And we went to mass there. We attended a mass, the Pilgrim Mass, and they were just so gaudy, and it was so gaudy.
All the gold, it's Trump Tower.
Yeah. Yeah. It was very gaudy and very icky, kind of. And you can see St. James there in the middle, right there, his statue. Saint James is buried there. Under the altar, down underneath. And when I was walking through underneath, there was a great big line of people behind me, so I took a really fast picture. That's why the picture's not very good. But he is buried there under the altar of the main sanctuary down underneath. So in Roman Catholicism in the Middle Ages, there were 3 pilgrimages you could make: Jerusalem, Rome, and Santiago de Compostela. And for medieval Catholics, pilgrimages were very important. It was very important to visit. And even, well, I'm not going to say his name because that's a pop quiz in a minute, but people visited these holy sites and they got a certificate, which was called an indulgence. You've heard of this, right? And if you got an indulgence and you ended up in purgatory, if you had a bunch of indulgences, you could get out of purgatory quickly. That's what the church is. And so people were flocking to these sites, and Compostela was in Spain. It wasn't that far, so it was a very, very popular route. Okay, now the pop quiz. Can you guess which Protestant reformer railed against indulgences? Yes, of course, Martin Luther. He said this was a lot of hooey. And so he doubted the authenticity of those bones, right? It was a legend. However, Pope Leo in 1864 declared the relic to be authentic. So there you have it. The infallibility of the Declaration of Pope. So we know we were so. The popularity of this was peaked in the Middle Ages, and by the 12th century, thousands and thousands of pilgrims were making this journey on foot, and they even published little route guides, and all kinds of infrastructure grew up around it, hospitalities and albergues or hostels were there, and inns and food, and even little hospitals to take care of the pilgrims who got hurt. It started to dip, the popularity started to dip after the Reformation, and the kibosh was put on the indulgences. And then in Europe, they were engulfed in war. Spain, England, France were fighting. The 30 Years' War broke out. And so all of this diminished the popularity and the frequency of pilgrims taking this route. But there was a resurgence, and it was never completely forgotten. Because I learned that something interesting. Our second president, yes, John Adams, took an overland trip from Galicia, Spain to Paris. And he wrote in his diary that he wished he had time to walk the Santiago de Compostela. So it wasn't forgotten. But now there's been a resurgence in popularity.
When did that start, the resurgence?
I'm going to say, well, Martin Sheen's film had a lot to do with it. And probably the 60s, 70s, it never died out. But it's gotten so popular. The day we arrived, 1,463 pilgrims had already come, and we arrived at about 6 o'clock in the evening. And already 1,400 people had gone there and gotten their certificate, which is not an indulgence. Yes.
I'm sorry, which Martin Sheen film is that?
Yeah.
It's,
And what year?
it's called The Way.
The Way.
Okay.
The
The
Way.
Way.
Okay.
What year?
It's about 13 years ago.
Okay.
So.
Oh,
wonder.
What recent?
Yeah, it's recent.
Michelle's going to talk about that. There are many official beginnings. Many official beginnings. You can even start here.
Well, the walk does begin with the first step you take, leaving your house, but
It is. So this is the plaza of the Camino of the Cathedral of Santiago. It's huge. And this is the plaza where we all gathered and cried and jumped up and down and said we did it. So I'm going to turn it over to Michelle. Okay. Should I take this? Do you want me to? Oh, stay up here?
yeah, stay up here.
Okay, okay.
Okay. So, I mean, I think I learned something. That was great. Thank you, Sue. The routes, there is not just one path to Santiago de Compostela. There are several, and we have a little indication here of different routes. So I'm gonna walk over here. We chose, there's two that start in Portugal, and one goes along the coast, and one is called the Central. We chose the Portuguese coastal route, because why not, right? I mean, that was the obvious one. It's also one of the shorter ones, as you can tell. The traditional one, the oldest one, starts in France at the base of the Pyrenees, and you spend the first 2 days climbing the Pyrenees.
Wow.
Yeah, that one did not sound appealing to us, but like I said, it's the most popular, it's the most traveled one. And then there are other ones. So you can start, that's France up there, you can cross all of northern Spain, but they all end up here at Santiago de Compostela. So there's that. So the first thing, if you're going to think about doing this, is to pick your coast, or pick your route. And there are, things to think about. Time is one. To do the traditional one from France takes about 30 days, and it's about 500 kilometers. The one we did was about 160 miles, 259 kilometers. And we did it over a span of, was it 14 days?
Yeah, we took one day off.
Okay, so for 2 weeks. We also, just as a side note, went a week early and spent a week traveling around Porto and Lisbon, because why not? Right. And I would recommend doing that first, doing your touristy stuff first, because at the end of your walk, you're done. You don't want to walk anymore. You don't want to go sightsee. You're done. So that's the way we did it, and it really made sense for us. So here we are in our little matchy shirts, and no, we did not wear the shirts every day of the walk, but we did start with them and end with our shirts. And yeah, that's the Portuguese coast behind us. There we are at the finish line. There were 5 of us for most of the trip. We did add Maria at the end. She joined us for the last few days. Fun fact, if you want your certificate of completion, which is, once you get started, that's the only thing you're thinking about. Just give me that certificate. Sue has beautifully framed hers. Mine is still rolled up in a tube. You only need to do the final 100 kilometers.
Oh.
So that's good to know. So you could cheat and start 100 kilometers out and just do that. And so that's what Maria did. She didn't have the time to do the whole thing with us, so she just came for the end.
Michelle, can you explain who all these people are? And
Sure.
how you all got together and decided to do this?
Sure, that's a fun question. So Tenley is the first one here on the left, who's sitting over here. She's just a dear friend of mine from 100 years ago. We grew up together. So when I mentioned this to her, she said yes before I finished the question. So that's awesome. After that is Elizabeth Gibbs Zender, who I believe is preaching this summer here. Is she? No. But she's also an ordained pastor. She's in our presbytery. She works as a chaplain now. She's great. And then I'm in the middle, and then Sue, and then Quibby Vermont with the blue hair. She tried to get us to all dye our hair blue, and we're like, yeah. So yeah, Quibby joined us, and then one of her congregants, Maria, joined us at the end. So yeah, we just kind of came together organically. It was going to be Quibby and I. In fact, real quick, this pilgrimage for us was 13 years to walk 13 days, because 13 years ago we saw the movie The Way, Quibby and I together. And I looked at her, I said, well, when are we doing this? She's like, we're going to do it. We're doing it for sure. And it took 13 years to get it planned and organized, and kids out of school and, time off from work. And so 13 years to do 13 days. Okay, getting off my little talk here. Okay, in order to prove that you have actually walked, because anybody could walk into the office and say, I'm done, here I am. You have to show them your passport, and I don't mean the one you get from the US government. I mean the more important passport, which right here.
We'll pass it on.
Yeah, I'll pass these around. This one's Sue's actually. So every time you stop at a restaurant or a bar or a hotel or anything, you get a stamp and a date. And so when you can look at that, pass it around. So when you get to the passport off or the office in Santiago de Compostela, they ask for your passport and they check the dates. And sure enough, if you were 100 kilometers, you get your certificate. So this thing became vital. And every time you stopped, you needed a stamp. And it was fun, you know, it was a fun little thing. And it's a great souvenir and, you know, really fun.
Michelle, did you have to make reservations at all the places you were gonna?
Okay, that's another good question. You can do this several ways. If you're young and, you know, kind of spontaneous, you can just put everything on your back and go. And along the way are albergues, which are hostels, and you can find a place to stay. And if you're a pilgrim, these places are free or almost free. If you are not that, or not looking for that, then you can hire somebody to take your bag for you from town to town, so you don't have to carry it on your back. And they will make reservations for you. So every day we knew, oh, today's an 8-mile day, today's a 15-mile day to get to our hotel that we knew was waiting for us. So there's different ways you can do it. And then once you decide that you want to have the hotels reserved for you, then you have to decide, do you want the 3-star hotels? Do you want the 5-star hotels with the spa and the, room service? So we kind of went the middle of the road route, and that was great. Breakfasts were always included. We were very comfortable. We were pretty much always 2 to a room. A couple of them did have a spa and a pool, and it's amazing. So yes, there are different ways you can do it, but you can definitely be comfortable and know that you have a place every night to stay. Yeah.
That picture before you were all touching the shell.
Mhm.
What's the shell?
I'm going to talk about that. Thank you. In fact, I will talk about that right now. The shell, and I'll pass my shell around. Sue's wearing hers, and Tinley's is attached to her backpack. This is, these were our day packs, by the way. This just had water and sunscreen and, our jacket or whatever. But every pilgrim has this shell, the scallop shell. It is, if you see this everywhere. First of all, it's always on the signs telling you where to go. They're attached to everybody. It started out because shells like this could be used as a tool. You could dig with it, you could drink from it, you could put food in it. So it became something useful for early pilgrims to carry. These shells are also found along the path up along the coast. And it was kind of proof that you had walked there. Like, hey, I found my shell, back in the days when you could find these on the beach. Now you're given one at the beginning of your journey, but I'll pass this around. Let's see. Yeah, you end up seeing these shells everywhere. We have patches on our backpacks that have the shell. Like I said, they're on every sign that we see. Sue didn't want to carry a backpack, so here was her option, was the vest. It worked really well for her. The shape of the scallop shell represents the different, can you go back to that other picture? The different paths. So different roads lead to one place. Yeah, fun fact, right? Okay. Let's see, what else?
When did you contact these people to set up your hotels and stuff?
We did that.
Back here, right?
We did it here. We did it through this company, Portugal Green Walks. They were great. When did we do this? We left in the end of April. We were doing it maybe November, 6 months out. We were thinking about it and getting it together. There's lots of other companies, but Portugal Green Walks served us well. All of our bags got from place to place. We never had a problem and our hotels were comfortable and it was great. Okay, the shell, the passport book, the signs with the yellow arrows. You are looking for this sign. In fact, we have one here too. Because this is the only thing telling you where to go. You know, it's not like when you're on this Portuguese coastal route, you can take this path or this path or this path and you end up at the same place every day. You are walking the same path that thousands, tens, hundreds of thousands of pilgrims before you have walked. So you are desperately looking for these signs. You don't want to miss it. You know, if you're looking at your phone or looking around or whatever, you could miss something and really go off the beaten path. So this became a lifeline for all of the pilgrims.
How frequent are they?
Sometimes they're a few feet away. Every time there's a decision to make, you'll see one. Sometimes you have to look, sometimes there might be things covering it or whatever, but
You know that.
yeah. Yes. We didn't get lost ever, but I also have to say there's a map you can download on your phone that will make sure, it'll show you where to go. It'll keep you going.
Ways for the way?
Exactly. Ways for the way. We tried not to use that a lot. We wanted to be dependent on those signs. And I made a book of our trip and there's one page that's dedicated. Every sign does not look just like this, but it is always yellow. And yeah, it could be any number of different ways, but that is a very common one.
Was it crowded? Were there lots of other people walking?
We went a really good time of year. We went in the spring. On our route, no, wasn't super crowded, but there were always people to see and to talk to. You never felt like you were alone in the middle of nowhere. Some of the other routes are more crowded. The summer tends to be more crowded because people have more time, but it's also really, really hot. But we had the benefit of wildflowers everywhere, and we saw wildflowers of every color, of every shape and size along the whole route. It was magical. Going in the fall is another good time to go, and then you're going to see all the grapes. And that's beautiful. Yeah, I would not go in the heat of the summer, and I wouldn't go in the winter either because it can be really wet.
Are there some people who sleep under the stars kind of thing? Or?
I am sure there are. Not us. I'm sure there are. Yeah.
Is there any way?
That's my dad, not my boyfriend. Just so you know.
Is there any other way to do this trip besides walking? If you're incapacitated in any way, is there any way to do it some other way than just walking?
Well, we did see bikers doing it. Now, bikers have to go 250 kilometers to get their certificate, so it's a longer route.
But not wheelchairs.
No, I just can't imagine how that would work unless you had really strong friends who were really willing to carry you through that. But a lot of it was, not a lot of it, but there were steep parts, it was rocky. We saw all different kinds of terrain too. We were in sand, we were on cobblestones, we were in the forest, we were, I mean, you name it. We were in grape fields, we saw animals. I mean, every half an hour, you'd see something completely different that you weren't expecting. Yeah, it's pretty amazing.
And then walking through major cities too?
A little bit of that, but not really. The path really does take you, at least ours. We weren't going through big cities, but some towns were very small, where our hotel was the only thing in town. And then other places were quite large. And sometimes we'd have to walk a mile or two off the Camino path to get to our hotel. So you can add that to our number here. You know, we were really close to 270 miles by the time we were done. But not big cities, but yeah, but mostly no.
So as a cyclist, that just seems terribly awkward to be like passing people.
Yeah.
Yeah, right?
Do
they get along or is there some animosity there?
Yes, and would you agree?
I would agree. felt we would be walking and sometimes the path was narrow.
Mm-hmm.
And then and these cyclists would not warn you, and all of a sudden they'd be trying to whiz by you, and can't you just say, hey, look out, I'm coming? So there was some of that, which annoyed me, but some of them were good and said, hey, to your left, or, and they had to go often on the same path, and the paths were steep and some were muddy and really rocky, so that had to be tough.
Yeah, it was helpful if they'd say there's 5 of us,
Yes.
or, you know, there's just me, or whatever, that would help, but
I would go by and then 6 more.
Yeah.
What?
yeah. Yeah, good questions. Okay, so a phrase that you, okay, I'll come back to you in 1 second, hold on 1 second. A phrase that you will say about 1,000,000 times a day is bon camino. You say that to every pilgrim you meet, you say that to every person you meet. It's just a greeting. You don't say hello, you don't say hola, you don't say whatever hello is in Portuguese.
Well, Bom Camino is Portuguese and Buen
And-
is Spanish.
Yeah, buen camino. Yeah, so you say these phrases all the time.
Did you, maybe you told them this, did you have a pair of sandals in your bag?
Oh,
and
that's a
your-
good question.
And sneakers or
Yes.
whatever?
Yes, I wish that I was getting paid by Hoka. I should, for the amount of people I told. Hokas are the way to go. Tenley's got hers on too. You know what? Even if you're not gonna do the Camino, go out right after church and go buy a pair of Hokas. They are the most comfortable, the most supportive shoe. They started out as orthopedic shoes. They're not that anymore. And they provide the most support, the most comfort, and I would say the vast majority of pilgrims who came from countries where they could buy Hokas had them on, and everybody swears by them, which the Hoka, Hoka, I swear they should pay me. I've turned everybody I know.
It's so cute too.
They're bright and colorful. Cute is one word. Sure. Also, walking goo. Every morning, we all had our little foot care ritual. And they varied. We didn't all do the same thing, but oh my goodness, you need something. But I'm proud to say that I didn't open a Band-Aid. I didn't need a Band-Aid. I mean, my feet were fine. They warned us, you're gonna lose your toenails, like your feet are gonna be a mess. Oh, yes.
These are one of the essentials for the Camino. It's called hiker's wool. You can get it on Amazon. I ordered mine from New Zealand. But you can get this, and if you're starting to get a hot spot on your foot, you immediately stop, take your shoe off, and you take a little chunk of this wool and you put it on the hot spot on your toe. And if you have a tape or a Band-Aid, you wind it around your toe. And there's natural lanolin in this wool. And so it keeps the hot spot moist and protected, and you will not develop a blister. And if you happen to have a blister, which I had, I put this wool on it and it just kind of made the blister go down and softened it up. And it's amazing. It's a hiker's wool.
What's this? It's called walk goo.
Yeah.
It's like, I don't know if it's lanolin, petroleum, mineral oil. Yeah, lanolin, alcohol. I don't know. It's thick and goopy. It's like Vaseline kind of, and you just slop it over your feet and then you pull on your socks. Now, socks is another thing you need to think about. We all went to REI and bought, you can either buy wool socks, which some of us were really happy with. I bought the double lined, cooling, no blister guarantee, $15 a pair socks. And they saved me. I mean, literally, I didn't have a problem. So there are things that you can do to make it easier. Something else I'm gonna say that I was super reluctant. Tenley can tell you, Sue can tell you. I was not gonna walk with poles because I'm big, I'm young, I don't need poles. So I went I did all of our training walks. I do recommend training for this. Don't just start out thinking, I can walk 8 to 15 miles a day, no problem. You can. I mean, you really should get in shape for it. So anyway, so we did all of our training walks. I never used sticks because I don't need them. And then we did our first day on the Camino. And again, I didn't have sticks because I didn't need them. And by the end of that first day, I'm like, feeling a little sore. maybe I should try these sticks. Let's just see what happens. And the other 4 of them were all using them. And I never put my sticks down after that. I am telling you, they are awesome. So you're thinking, well, why? What do sticks do? They do something.
I'm gonna demonstrate.
Oh, thank you.
It takes the pressure off your hips and your knees and your ankles and kind of distributes the weight a little bit more. Also, you are on terrain that's crazy. So it offers some stability. You know, if there's branches in your way, you can get the branches out of you. I mean, they're a multi-purpose tool here. If there's somebody bugging you, you can whack them.
Yeah, but
I have arthritis in my hip and my knee, and I was a little worried about this trip. These poles were a lifesaver because as you're walking, you can put some pressure with your arms on the poles, and it really takes a lot of impact off your arthritic areas.
Especially downhill.
What's that?
Going downhill.
Oh,
Helpful downhill, helpful uphill. Right. Once I opened mine, they were not collapsed again until I went home. Now, do think about this though. You can't carry these on an airplane. You can't. So if you're like me, I'm a light traveler, I just bring on my carry-on and I'm good. You have, even though these collapse, they won't let you carry them on. So if you do, you either need to buy them there or you need to plan on checking a bag, and a bag that's big enough to put these in once they're collapsed. They collapse to this size. So that's a fun fact that you might want to know ahead of time. They do not allow poles in carry-on. Or you can't carry them in your hand, you can't carry them in your tote bag, you can't carry them in your roller bag onto the airplane. You have to check these.
So you bought them there, or did you?
Well, that's a funny question because I wasn't gonna use them. So yes, I did buy mine there. Everybody else, well, you bought yours there too,
I brought mine.
and 3 of them brought theirs with them. Yeah. So.
Laundry. Good.
That's a good question too. Great questions. All these things that I wouldn't have even thought about talking about. Yes, laundry. We had one rest day in the middle. So we walked for like 6 days, took a rest day, and then walked for 6 or 7 more. And that is the day that we did laundry. So we were in this amazing town with all this great food. We were right on the coast. And yes, they have laundromats. So we took advantage of that. So we packed enough that could get us through to that point. And then we were washing our socks and all of our things and our smelly shirts and all of that. And then, yeah, easy peasy. Yeah.
The spiritual aspect of the walk.
Yeah. What's yeah.
Every day,
Oh.
we're doing a prayer circle every day. How can you speak about that?
Yes, we're gonna close with that. And yes, I'm gonna come back to that, but yes, thank you for bringing that up. Yeah, yeah.
What happened?
We did. We were the Pellegrinos.
Yeah.
We were the Pellegrinos. Peregrinos. Yeah, not like the water, not Pellegrino.
Fun-loving, adventuresome broad.
Exactly. Yes, yeah. And we, what's that?
You had your own t-shirt?
We do, yeah.
Well, we bought them, but it says adventure.
Adventure awaits. Let's go. Let's go find it. Yeah. Yeah,
Fun.
that was fun. In fact, we all had our little matchy things. We had bandanas that had the shell on it. We all had temporary tattoos of the shell on our bodies somewhere, so people can see that. We kind of took the shell thing and the matchy thing to an extreme. In fact, I don't know if it's up here, but we had a picture of many of us had the same shoes on, the same color and everything, so we were matchy. Yeah. Do you have a question, Charlie?
Yeah. 14 days
Yeah.
walking together, or 13.
Yeah.
Are you all still friends?
Better friends than ever. Yes, yes. Yeah, it was great.
Let me say one thing.
Uh-oh.
There was one day out of all those days where we had a little disagreement about which way to go on the route.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
There was a little bit of tension that day. Some of us said, let's just keep going this way. It looked like it was gonna be on a highway, but we weren't sure. And then some said, no, we gotta go this way. So we parted for the first time.
But explain, that wasn't on the Camino. That was when we were in the
Oh,
town.
yeah, it was in the, we had gotten off the Camino and we had to find our hotel. So let's go this way. We looked at Google Maps, where's the hotel? Let's go this way. And so we had one disagreement and it wasn't even a bad one, but it was that. So, but we got along great.
So two of us went one way and
And
three of us went the other.
Who made the right decision?
We both did. I'm out there, so.
There was no wrong decision. Oh, COVID, we were not spared. Well, I was
You were.
spared. Of the five of us, the other four all got COVID. I kid you not. Right at the beginning of the walk, we got through our touristy part of exploring Portugal, and then day one, day two, they started dropping like flies. The cough, the sore throat, the achy, the tired. One by one, they all took a test. I kept testing too, but I had just had it in January, so I think my immune system was still keeping me safe. That's the only thing I think that kept me safe. But yeah, so some of our pilgrim friends here had to skip a day or two, but that was at the beginning. We all finished the 100 kilometers consecutively at the end, so everybody got their certificate. But there were a few days that a few of them had to, you could take a bus, you could take a taxi to the next town and just wait for us there. And then in many cases, they were able to get private rooms. We had to switch that all up, but and all of them walked with COVID symptoms. I mean, the mask, all of that, but you had to get from here to there. You had to get through it. You've already invested all this time and you're ready to do it. So they were so strong.
You were able to do it,
Well, I didn't get it.
but you were able to do it.
My symptoms weren't too bad. I texted, Tenley had it. Tenley never missed a day, but your fever broke during the night, so you
During the
didn't
night,
go.
yeah.
I never had a fever. I had a sore throat, or I had laryngitis, and I emailed my doctor. I said, should I do this? Oh, I'm so upset because I got it the night before we had to start our final 100 kilometers, and I said, if I have to crawl on my belly, I'm gonna do this. So I emailed my doctor and she said, as long as you don't have shortness of breath, you can do it. We did it. And these women, well, I'll talk about that later. So great.
I also want to say, this is not a trip for just 20-year-olds or 30-year-olds or 40-year-olds or 50-year-olds. We saw 80-year-olds doing this. We saw old married couples that had been together forever and they would, have their walking sticks. I saw one couple that were holding hands. It was the sweetest thing. So there is no reason why any of you, well, the wheelchair would be hard. Marianne, we got to get you.
Yes.
Where are you? Yeah, we got to get you back and then, you can do it too. We saw people of all ages. In fact, we saw, I don't know if I'd say more older people, but at least half as many people in their 70s and 80s doing it as people in their 20s and 30s. So don't think this is just something that you can get to through hearing our adventures and that's as close as you'll ever come. Mary did it. Mary did it for her 60th birthday. Yeah. Yep. Is there anyone else in here who's done this? Or who's known someone besides us that's done it? Yeah. Yeah, almost everybody. Yeah. Yeah, it is great. So, okay, this goes back to talking about different ways you can do it. There's the public or private albergues, a private room. So obviously different costs, but I've heard that the public albergues are free. So I don't know. It's somewhere between free and €7. Food, a lot of your foods include, well, your breakfast is included. And if we knew that we weren't gonna be stopping at many lunch places, some days there's more places to stop to eat than others. So we would just pack a lunch from our breakfast food. It was always a buffet. So we would take bread and cheese and prosciutto and fruit and, all the stuff they had there. And gosh, you guys dying. It was great. It was fun to do that. So that's again, why we had our backpacks. Also for our, we had a little bit of rain. So you always want to have a rain poncho with you. One that folds up. Yeah, it's in there. One that folds up small. And then laundry, yeah. local transport, all of that, Camino gear. So that's a little bit of a breakdown of what we paid, but really, it was not the most expensive vacation I've ever been on, for sure.
It's inexpensive.
Amount approximately.
Well, I think our hotels were like 100 a night, were they that? You know, then getting there, of course, you know, you're not spending a lot on food. And there's really only 3 things you're doing on this trip once you're walking. You're walking, you're eating, and you're sleeping. There's not a lot of, I brought games. I'm like, oh, we're gonna be playing cards at night. No. I brought books. Oh, yeah, I'll have time to read. No. I brought a journal. I was able to journal somewhat, but even I was journaling saying, I really don't have enough time to journal right now. So I'm gonna close this, you know, like ridiculous. So you're not like shopping, you're not buying little trinkets to bring home, because first of all, you don't want to carry them. Second of all, there's just not much to buy.
Like
Okay.
2,500, 3,000 max.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Well, it depends on what you do your first, if you go early, but for the walk itself, yeah, 2,000 maybe, does that sound right, Tenley?
Maybe 3. What did we pay?
I can pull the cost thing up in just a second.
Okay, okay. And while Sue was doing that, yeah, poncho, water, different ways to carry water. You can carry a bottle of water, like many of you have with you now. I was the only one that did it this way, but I had like a bladder in my backpack with a little sippy thing. Well, because I'm using sticks, I could just sip and walk. So for me, that worked out great until I got a hole in my bladder and then, you know, water everywhere, but whatever.
Metaphor for life.
Basically, let's close at the top, so as long as I'm gonna let past that hole. But you're stopping all the time anyway. Every time there's something beautiful to take a picture, you're stopping, you're putting your bowls down, you're getting out your water, so.
You didn't mention that.
Oh, I have 2 things to say.
Specialty.
Yes, I have 2 things to say about that. One, there are bars and restaurants along the way, so there are definitely places to stop. And when there's not, then you start looking for creative places to stop. And Sue's gonna tell us how you know you found a good spot.
This is being recorded, right? Okay. So my biggest fear traveling is there's not gonna be a bathroom. And one of the kindnesses of when we talk about our spiritual part, I'm gonna talk about kindness. And the people in Portugal were so kind. And you could go to any restaurant, any hotel, any place, and go in and say, could I use you? And they'd say, sure. And often when you go somewhere to a restaurant, you gotta eat there or you gotta buy something in order to use the bathroom. That wasn't the case. They said, just come. If you're on the trail and you gotta go, you gotta go. So you have to find a little place off the trail. And we found, I had to go a couple times off the trail. We all did, at least once or twice. And how you knew you found a great place was there's been people there before you that didn't take their trash. If you use a toilet paper or something, you're supposed to carry a baggie with you and take your paper with you. A lot of people didn't, which was gross.
Ew.
But you know,
And not
you gotta go, you gotta go.
Right. Yeah. So we'd say, oh, this must have been a good spot because there's toilet paper everywhere. But yeah, that wasn't a big problem. Any other questions?
Yeah, what was your walking day? Like, did you start walking at 8, 9 and end at 6, or
Good
did you have
question.
a plan?
We would find out what time they serve breakfast, and it was usually 7 or 7:30 or 8. So whatever it was when they opened up breakfast, we made sure we were there because we wanted to get going. It does stay light, really late in this part of Spain and Portugal. We just wanted to get an early start and get done. So we would start breakfast usually at 7:30 or 8, be on the road by 8:30 or 9. You bring your bag to the lobby, knowing that it's gonna get to the next place. You go in, you get your breakfast, you pack up your lunch, you get your water, you put your sunscreen on, and then, you hit the trail. And then, you you'll have a coffee at lunch, at breakfast, and then we'll always stop an hour or two in to get our second cappuccino, because that's what you do when you're in Europe. And then lunch, and then, treat in the afternoon. So we weren't trying to get there as fast as we could. We wanted to enjoy the scenery and enjoy the journey. So some days we get there, well, it depends, if you're walking 8 miles, you're gonna be there in the early afternoon. If you're walking 15, you're gonna be getting there quite a bit later. And, in that part, again, of Portugal and Spain, they don't eat dinner. This was a weird thing we found that, we'd wanna eat dinner like 6 or 7, because that's what normal people do, right? Not in that part of the world. So they're like, we don't even open for dinner until 8, and
Yeah.
9 and 10 is more common. And we're like, are you kidding me? Yeah, I'm gonna be so asleep by then, forget it. So sometimes our restaurant choices were based on who's gonna open up first. Yeah, so there's that.
That was the Portuguese green walks cost, am I right? That look right?
Which is in euros, which is,
Which I don't remember it. So was it that expensive?
yeah, so this is about 1,000 euros for green walks. So that included our hotels,
Okay.
luggage being moved. So for the 2 weeks that we were under their care, about 1,000, give or take. The reason why there's one that's a lot more expensive is she was our 5th, so she had to pay for the private room, but that came in handy as people started getting sick. Everybody kind of traded into having a private room, so they worked that out. See.
So, besides how far you walk each day?
Okay, well, Quibi was our leader on that with green walks. So she kind of talked with us and we agreed that 8 to 15 miles was about our comfort zone. So she said to them, we want to do this in 13 days. We want it between 8 and 15 miles, and they figured it all out. So they gave us a book.
Do you think that's a good?
Yeah, that it was a good pace for us. Yeah. They gave us a book. This was like our Bible. And it broke it down for us. Like every customer they have gets a book that's like this, but not identical to this. So this was our journey. So it had our hotel, where we were staying, how many miles or kilometers it was gonna take to get us there.
They tailor it to each.
Yes, so there might be people that do the Portuguese coastal route that say, I wanna do it in 10 days. So they're gonna be walking further, their book's gonna be a little bit different. They're gonna stay in different places, but this was the timing that we wanted and the distance that we wanted. So you can see the breakdown. Stage means your day of walking. So stage 3, our 3rd day of walking, was a long one, 14.6 miles. And then the next one was only 11. I never in my life thought I'd say only 11 miles, only 8 miles. But there's definitely a difference between 8 and 15. But we thought soon. Yes, okay, so really quickly, what was the spiritual component for us? It was not religious for me, and nor did I expect it to be per se. I'm not Catholic. Pilgrimages aren't really something in my wheelhouse or in my frame of reference. But it was definitely spiritual. And believe me, any thoughts that you're having or any problems that you're dealing with or any concerns you have that you've been like suppressing, hoping not to think about, just trying to ignore, somehow find their way right into your consciousness as you're walking for 15 miles a day. So there's a lot of, you're alone with your thoughts a lot, even though you're with 4 other women who are all chatty and there's only so much you can talk about for all those hours. So you are left with a lot of time to just think about all the things. So that's what I got out of it. And I'm not going to share with you all things that I was thinking about, but that's, that for me was, really what it meant was really, just taking time to be out of your out of your routine. You know, I wasn't thinking about, I hope JP brings the trash can out today because the trash guy's coming. You know, I'm not thinking about that. Who's feeding the dog? Like, I don't know, somebody. You're just living in the moment, separated from everything else in your life. And boy, when else can you say that? So for me, that was the most powerful part, but I know Sue has something to say too.
My maiden name is Pellegrini, which means pilgrim in Italian. So I thought, I'm destined to do this journey. I read a lot and heard a lot on blogs and so forth about people who've done this, and they all said, it changed my life. I came back a different person. I thought, what if I don't get changed? What if I come back the same? I worried. I thought, oh no, I'm just getting back the same old stinking Sue I already am. But then I thought, well, it's really stupid to worry about that because that's gonna block anything you have to feel or say. So I dumped that in a big hurry. I would say, well, on our first day, we got in a circle and we anointed each other with oil and gave a word of encouragement. We started out that way. And during the day, I would pick one thing to keep in my mind to pray for. I prayed for Ukraine and my kids. Some days I forgot because I was worried about, you know, so I didn't do it every day.
You also had COVID.
I also had COVID, but you know, I didn't do the prayer thing every day. But when I remembered, I would pick a thing in my life and do that. But the thing that struck me about this trip was the word kindness and caring for each other. Because these women, I'll tell you, no matter what we needed, somebody had it in their suitcase. No matter whether it was an aspirin or a Band-Aid or a COVID test or Imodium D or no matter what we needed, somebody had it and somebody brought it. And we were kind to each other. When I had COVID, and Michelle, one of you said, Sue, you need to sit down. So we would rest. And we really took care of each other. And it reinforced for me how important community is and how important caring for one another is. Because I don't know, I don't think any of us ever felt like our needs weren't met by the other women and we weren't cared for. And so the spirituality for me was to say, keep remembering to be kind and keep remembering to take care of people. Because we were talking a minute ago, would we do it again? And you said yes, but maybe not with quite so many, maybe with one other person. And then I asked Michelle, would you do it alone? Maybe you would. I would not do it alone. I would be a little terrified, but I would do it with one or two other people because you need people. And a lot of people do it alone. They do. And that's great.
But you're never alone for long.
No, there's people around and you're in towns and so forth, but the kindness of the women that I was with and the kindness of the countries we were in, they were very hospitable, especially to us pilgrims. The doors were always open and they were always ready to help and serve us in some way. So,
Well, especially in today's climate,
yeah.
how wonderful to have the embrace of that experience.
Yeah, yeah. I just kind and Portugal are always going to be two words that go together.
The last thing I'm gonna say, if you're thinking about doing this, there are easier paths than others. Like I said, you know, the long one through the Pyrenees is gonna be rough. It's gonna be really hard. Ours had a little bit of elevation, but it was doable and you can always stop. You don't have to race to the next place. You can always take longer, you know, you can go 5 miles a day or whatever. So if this is like planting a seed somewhere in the back of your head, it does not have to be, it's not a marathon. Well, I guess it is a marathon, but it's a walking very slow marathon. It's not a sprint and you don't have to be in amazing shape. You don't have to train forever, but I would do some distance walks before you go. So you have a sense of what that's like, but it is definitely doable.
Did you see anyone who took their watercolor paints and actually could do it, even if it was just at lunch?
No, I didn't see that. No, the one thing I did see that I wasn't expecting is a baby in a backpack. Different from painting along the way, but maybe That I didn't expect to see. I did not see people painting.
Nobody's putting in their
No,
journal.
no, but I'm sure it's happening.
Seeing the beauty be a temptation now.
I know.
What would you say the national diversity was? Was it 50% American?
Of the pilgrims?
Yeah.
That is such a good question. I would say it was as diverse as it could have been.
As many Europeans and Asians and Indians?
Maybe not as many Asians. Didn't see many Africans either. New Zealand, Australia, Europeans, more Europeans than anything else. Lots of Americans. So, yeah, I guess that would be the diversity. It would be among Europeans
And the
and,
lingua franca was like English.
yeah, pretty much.
Australia, there were some Australians.
Yeah.
No, I
A
said,
couple from, oh, you did?
yeah, no, Australians and New Zealand for sure, but yes, English was the language primarily spoken. And that's true all through Portugal and Spain too. You can get away with your English. I think, oh my gosh, we're 2 minutes late. Okay, okay, they're gonna let you go. But if you have other questions, please come find me. Next week too. I gotta shoot.